Hi, all, and welcome to Data Lens, the short series where we talk about market research in the outdoor hospitality industry. Today, I'm here with Scott Barr, per usual, the president of Karen Consulting Group. With over 35 years of market research experience, Scott has a wealth of knowledge to share, and I'm here to ask him questions that you want to know. So let's hop in. On today's episode, we'll be talking about how market research helps you set the right prices. Alrighty. So Scott, any initial comments before we hop into questions?
Pricing is one of the questions that we get a lot. We don't necessarily get it as much in the hospitality sector. A lot of it has to do with, sometimes the pricing strategies have a lot to do with, say a product or a membership, or something along those lines. And so but it is a topic that everybody is very interested in, yet they don't always take the time to really evaluate it adequately because it all comes from the perspective of the guest.
No, interesting. And yeah, I think that pricing is something that everyone at least at once in their career talks about, but it's fine. Interesting. So hopping in, what factors would you say influence pricing decisions in the outdoor hospitality industry specifically?
Well, first and foremost, it's what are you offering? What is it you're offering? If you're a campground or glamping resort, what are you offering that the guest values? And everything that you have, a guest will assign a value to, and in many cases a dollar value. And so one of the things that you have to take into consideration is, if you are charging more for, say, a pull-through RV site than your nearest competitor, what is it that about staying with you that offers the guest more value to justify that difference? If you don't offer more than your competitor, then you have to reevaluate your pricing strategy. You have to think about, okay, should I be offering this price point now, or should I lower it? If it's working for you, then obviously it's not broke, don't fix it. But at some point, as the guests become more knowledgeable and have more access to information, they're going to find out. The average guest is probably going to look at 3 to 4 different places to stay in your area, and they're going to price compare. But when they price compare, again, they're going to look at it from the point of view of, what are you offering? What is it? What do I have that's different? And that's what it comes down to in terms of the guest perspective.
Interesting. So with that, because I've seen a lot of conversations around flexible pricing or time-based pricing, or factor-based pricing. I'm not quite sure if there's this
dynamic pricing.
Dynamic pricing. Thank you. So when it comes to dynamic pricing, would you say that is a benefit for the outdoor hospitality industry, or kind of what are your thoughts on it?
It benefits the owner and operator of the campground in that, it's based on demand and what do you have. It helps you maximize revenue, but also it can help you the other way, which is entice visits by dropping your price. So it does offer that. The one caution I would offer in that situation is, one, really plan well what your rules are for your dynamic pricing, and I really think that's great. The other is managing the expectations of the guest. It's if you have a repeat guest and all of a sudden they try booking the site and it's substantially higher than in the past, you might have a problem with that guest. So those are the things that really need to be considered when looking at dynamic pricing. It is and it can be a valuable tool, but again, always put yourself in the place of the guest. Where's their head at? How would you feel if you were in that situation? How would you approach it if you were trying to book a site at your campground? That I think is the most important part to consider.
Yeah, because it seems like, you really got to use kind of the knowledge and, really putting the guest experience first. So before you set anything, which, I mean, naturally leads into this next question. So how do you use data to set competitive yet profitable prices?
The first thing that I would recommend people do is to do some research, figure out what everybody else is offering for a similar site. That's your competitive analysis right there. Go out, look, these site prices are out there. You can find them. Just make sure it's a direct competitor. For example, if you're a resort offering a ton of services, amenities with a swimming pool and full hookups and such, don't compare yourself to like a state park that may be fairly rustic camping. That's not a fair comparison. Find someone who's very similar to you and look at the sites that are being offered and make sure that it's an apples to apples comparison. The other step that I would recommend doing is to use a price sensitivity study to evaluate how guests view different price points. And there's a technique called the Van Westendorp price sensitivity model, where you ask 4 questions of each person about price. And the questions are, at what point is it too expensive that I would never stay there? I wouldn't book. At what point is it expensive, but I would consider it? On the other end is like what is too cheap that it would make me question the quality? And the fourth is it's a little bit lower price, but it's kind of in the ballpark thing. So you have these 4 questions essentially about, and what you do is you plot that out and you can get the intersection, you get your zone of tolerance for what people will pay. And this technique's been used for a very long time, and it's highly useful. I've helped several clients with their pricing of, especially like membership and in products and so on, to identify what it is, and it typically works. The key there, though, is to make sure that the people understand what it is you're offering, where you're at, and everything, so you can set the stage. If you just ask people off the street, it's not going to work as well. But that's a great way, that kind of 2-step, and then process, and then so now you have what your competitors are offering. You can see that, and now you can see what the guests think, and you can see where you sit within that zone of tolerance. You can see where you sit within the array of your competitors, and then you have to decide: are you where you should be, or should you change? And that's, essentially what the process is. Another way to evaluate your pricing strategy is to look at how you've changed your prices and whether that's impacted your stays, your number of stays. Is your are you still getting the same number of guests? Are you getting more? Who are you getting? That's another consideration, because some campgrounds and parks will use a pricing strategy to attract this specific type of guests, and that it can be effective, an effective way to do that. But that's a decision that, as a park owner, you have to make, and whether it's going to work for you and your park.
No, it seems like there's a lot that goes into it. So
there is. I mean, it can be relatively simple, but it's one of the more important things that you do. It's when people are looking for a place to stay, one of the first things they look at is price, and they do in their heads, they'll do a value analysis, their own value analysis, which can bring us to maybe a topic that maybe you were going to bring up, but I'll just go right into it. And that is, another thing that you can do is look at what you have and how much value do guests assign to that. Now, this isn't the type of thing that you can just go out and grab. but there are sources that have that. We happen to be one of those, that we happen to know what the relative value of the services and amenities that campgrounds offer have to the guest. So now we can feed that into our model and say, here's how much value having like a swimming pool offers. Here's how much value RV pull-through sites have to RVers. Here's how much value having a spa or all those things, on-site recreation. Each of those has a value in the mind of the consumer. So what we do is offer that, and it's based on years of research that we've done. And if anyone wants to spend a huge amount of money on another study that we can update to, or have it be specific for you, then by all means give us a call. But the preference would simply be to ask that question and have a value analysis done, especially if you're considering upgrades at your park. What is the value to that, and how much? So if you add a service or amenity, how much can you charge on top of what you already are charging for a site based on that? So that's kind of the next stage of that process too. So, again, it's always a moving target because campground owners are always making changes, which is good. Doing upgrades, adding services and amenities, and again, each one of those has a value in the mind of the guest.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's like there's a lot of tools, it seems like, at people's fingertips. So what are the common pricing mistakes and how do you avoid them? From both a outdoor hospitality in general perspective and then also on the campground owner side.
I think honestly that the one mistake in the situation we're in right now is to be over reliant on dynamic pricing. That really needs to be thought through very well. The other mistake is to, and this happens, and it might sound counterintuitive to what I just said, but in many cases to undervalue what you offer. And that tends to be something that you have to, that's why you have to find that zone of tolerance for the guest, because if your campsites are priced too low, people are going to question the quality of it. They're going to question what you have. You want them, regardless of what you have, you want the person to have a premium experience, whether it's through your hospitality or your services and amenities. So if you don't devalue what you offer, I think that probably is something that I don't think I run into a lot of people who charge too much. In all honesty, I think most people end up erring on the other side because they're afraid of turning people off with their prices. But and you can do that, and you'll know it right away. If you're priced too high, you'll know it very quickly. So just keep an eye on that, monitor it. But yeah, those are the most common mistakes, I think.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that people will find that extremely helpful. So, all right. Thank you everyone for joining us today for another episode of Data Lens. Don't forget to leave a comment or a question for next week's episode and hit that like button if you like what you see. And as always, subscribe so you never miss out. Have a good day.
Thank you.